What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking about summertime worm fishing, specifically fishing a drop shot. I have some tips and some tricks to help you catch more fish right now. Fishing a drop shot in the heart of summer can be lights out, especially when you're fishing around pressured fish or suspended fish. You know, now that we're getting into July and the later months of this year, these fish have seen a lot of baits. So suspending a worm, a soft plastic bait in their face can help them or help you catch more fish, get them to bite when they've seen tons and tons of shaky heads and Texas rigs and all those those very popular, really popular techniques. But a drop shot this time of the year is my go-to finesse technique. Whether I'm fishing a power shot like this on a bait caster, or I'm fishing an exposed hook with a little shad style bait with an exposed hook in clear water reservoirs, either way, a drop shot is in my arsenal because I have so much confidence in it. So today we're going to talk about some of my just some tips on fishing a drop shot this time of the year, why you should be throwing one, and then some tricks, and then some of my favorite baits in each of the two categories: the weedless Texas rig drop shot or power shot, and then the nose rig or the nose hook, the exposed hook drop shot. So number one, why does the drop shot shine? You know, like I said a little bit earlier, you have, well, let me back up. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with a drop shot, you know, on this channel we have subscribers that are seasoned tour professionals all the way on the opposite end of the spectrum to beginning bass fishermen. So a drop shot, what it is a finesse technique that suspends your bait up away from the bottom, up away from your weight. Okay, so whether you're fishing in 30 feet of water or 3 feet of water, having your worm suspended up off of bottom is a completely different presentation than these fish are used to seeing with a Texas rig or a jig or a shaky head, a Carolina rig, where those worms or soft plastics are down there directly on bottom. Now your leader can be anywhere from 6 inches to 18 inches. We're going to talk about that here shortly, but that is a drop shot for you fishermen that aren't aware what a drop shot is. So being able to suspend your bait up off bottom, up above the grass, or up above the rocks, or just in that fish's face, gives that technique, it gives that bait just a different presentation that these fish don't see a lot of. So number one, I like to target deep structure this time of the year. Okay, you know, we know that there are shallow fish and we know that there are deep fish. The shallow fish, those are your fish you're catching on frogs and flipping and punching and stuff, and you can do that with a heavy power shot. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Heavy line, heavy hook, heavy weight, and again, you can flip and pitch a power shot. But I like to target fish around deep structure this time of year. I like to focus more on the deeper fish, especially if I'm fishing in a reservoir. Typically reservoirs have clearer water, which means a lot more visibility. So that's when I will fish deeper, you know, that 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 feet of depth down there on those isolated rock piles, the isolated key pieces of structure or cover that these fish like to hide in or ambush from. But a drop shot is ideal for fishing bass in that 15 to 30 foot range. You know, typically in the summertime, we're dealing with higher water temps. We're dealing with water. As that water temp rises, the oxygen level in the actual water decreases. So these fish are looking for cooler water. And if you can get below that thermocline, you get down deeper, typically that deeper water is cooler. So I like to focus on main lake points, brush piles, ledges, humps, bluff walls, anything that kind of lets me fish in that deeper water. Now, as far as the baits themselves, I keep it extremely simple. I have a couple straight tail worms that I like to fish if I'm fishing the Weedless Texas rig version. And then I have a few more specific baits that I like to fish when I am fishing the nose hook or exposed hook drop shot technique. You know, the baits have a little bit different action, and so that's why I have a couple more, you know, 3 or 4 that I'm gonna recommend to you guys. But I like to use straight tail worms for that Texas rig technique, and I like to use finesse kind of bait fish, shaddy style, smaller profile worms for that exposed hook technique. Now, one thing I mentioned just a little bit earlier was the actual leader length when you're tying your drop shot. Now, clear water, these fish can see a lot better. You can suspend that bait up off bottom if you're a northern fisherman fishing around lots of rock that might have zebra mussels or quagga mussels, things that are gonna cut your line. You can have that leader 18 inches, 2 feet, 2.5 feet, get that bait up off of bottom and suspend that bait higher up off of bottom. Or say you're fishing like this rig right here. This is that Texas rig, that power shot. I'm fishing that in and around grass lines, okay? So sometimes this time of the year, you get grass lines out in that 15 to 18 foot depth. Deeper water, you have that grass line. It's a great area for fish to seek cover in it and ambush from it. So I like to fish a power shot weedless along that grass line, but that as well, I will have a little bit longer leader, maybe 18 inches or so. Now for you shallow fishermen, this technique works great. It works extremely well for fishing around docks or laydowns or brush piles because it is weedless. And again, we're talking about that power shot where we're using a bait caster with braid to leader or heavier fluorocarbon with a little bit heavier hook where you could just straight jack them like you would with a jig or a shaky head or your favorite Texas rig. You can fish this shallow. It fishes extremely well shallow as well. If say I'm here on Chickamauga and I'm up fishing the shoreline around reeds or bulrushes or cattails, you know, shallow grass edges, I can flip and pitch this thing around and through that stuff and not get hung up, and then still have the backbone and the power, the hook, the line, everything to get those big fish out of that cover. But this works extremely well for shallow fishermen too. Again, I just like to, typically this time of the year, I start out throwing reaction, whether it's shallow or deep. A lot of times this time of the year, I'm catching fish offshore, like I talked about, those main lake points, those humps, those offshore humps and saddles. You know, as those fish move out, I'll try it with a spoon or a crankbait, something like that, a fast moving bait. But there's a lot of times, especially midday, when these fish are real just lethargic, where suspending that drop shot in their face will get you bit when they just don't want to eat anything else. But again, covering just some tips on the drop shot and why it works so well this time of the year, but playing around with your leader length can adjust how much you're getting snagged or hung up or getting bit. So play around with your leader length. If you find that those fish are relating closer to bottom, shorten your leader length. You know, 6 inches, a little bit shorter, get that bait down close to bottom, just off of bottom where it's still in their face, but you're not getting hung up in the little pea gravel or the little, not pea gravel, but little chunk rock and those sort of things, okay? Now the drop shot, here I am, I'm playing different scenarios in my head as I'm talking about this. You know, we've caught fish throughout the country on a drop shot, whether we're fishing a a clear highland reservoir that has 30 foot of visibility, or we're fishing backwaters on the Tennessee River where you have 18 inches of visibility, a drop shot has caught big fish all throughout the country, and especially this time of the year. But one thing I want to convey is well, there's a few things I want to convey, but the first thing is be really selective with your line choice. You know, these fish, now that we're getting into the middle of summer, middle of July, you know, these fish have been fished for several months now, and they've seen a lot of baits. That is why I'm recommending the drop shot, because it's not as common as it used to be. There was a time, it seems like a few years ago, where everything was being won on a drop shot. Now a lot of guys are throwing the Neko rig, or they're throwing a free rig, or they're throwing a light Carolina rig or Texas rig, small finesse jig. So guys have kind of went away from the drop shot, but it's just such a fish catching technique. So the one thing I want to say about line is, if you can get away with it, downsize your leader length. Again, I'm throwing braid to leader typically. I'm throwing like a 20 or a 30 pound braid, a real small diameter braid, to a 8, 10, 12, or 15 pound fluorocarbon leader, depending on the type of vegetation or cover that I'm fishing in and around or through. And then also the caliber of fish that are in the fishery that I'm fishing. You know, if I'm fishing, you know, a lake like Chickamauga, where there's the possibility of catching an 8, 10, 12 pounder at any given cast, I might go up to a 12 or a 15. But if I'm fishing a fishery where a big largemouth or a big spotted bass is, you know, 3 or 4 pounds, I can get away with that 8 or 10. So just be thoughtful about your line choice, and remember, these fish are going to be down there examining your bait, okay? So they're going to be able to see a lot of things. Number 2, don't give your bait too much action, okay? So we are talking about shaking a drop shot. We are talking about, you know, suspending this bait down there in their face. But understand that with a drop shot and fishing a worm, for the most part, less is more, okay? So you want to, whether I'm fishing around dock pilings, brush pile, out off of a deep grass line, a deep rock pile, maybe I've already said that, but I throw my bait out. I'm typically using a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce weight. I keep my weights very specific because I like to be in tune with my combo. I want to know when my bait feels a little bit heavier than that 1/4 ounce head that I'm used to throwing, or a little bit heavier than that 3/16 ounce head, right? A lot of times, these fish are gonna eat that bait on the initial fall, the initial drop. So when I get that bait out there, let me make another cast for you guys. When I get that bait out there, I'm letting it fall on slack line. Okay, it gets down to bottom. I slowly lift up my slack and I check my rod tip for deflection. That's that bend in that rod tip. Okay, all right, my bait's moving, it's down there on bottom. I might just do like a drag, a subtle lift and drag technique. Again, with these worms, I'm gonna recommend examining all this underwater footage that Matt and I have, you know, compiled through the years and examined. We have our favorite baits, and it's just seeing how natural these worms or these shad style baits just kind of hover in the water or float or whatever you want to call it. They look so good. But basically, I'm doing that drag, lift. I might be coming through rocks. I might have to shake a little bit. But again, less is more with a drop shot. You know, every little movement, that worm is down there swimming around, shaking around, shimmying around. So be careful, be cognizant of how much action you're giving your worm. Now, obviously that really comes into play in the cold weather months. So now that we're in July, heading, you know, we're right in the middle of summer, you can get away with fishing a little bit faster, fishing a little bit more aggressive, but just be cognizant of that. Remember, less is more when you're shaking your drop shot worm. Just a couple little tips for you fishing. And real quick, this guy right here, I'm gonna get several comments. I always do every time I use this thing in a video. That is a Cal Coast Cali clip. It comes in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. And it has a hook opening and a line slot on each side. So basically, they pop onto your rod, and for a drop shot, it's awesome because you just run your weight right through there and you're good to go. If you're fishing a jig or a crankbait or something like that, obviously you could run your hook through that hook opening, but that is what that is. I know we always get comments on videos when I'm using these in a video, you know, what is that clip that you just clipped your bait on? That's what that is. We'll link everything down below in the video description. But fishing a drop shot, let's talk about the baits. Let's talk about the Texas rig baits, because that is my smallest category. You know, I basically, if you want to keep it super simple, take your favorite 6-inch thin worm, rig it on a cover shot HD hook with a 3/16 or 1/4 ounce sinker that has a tie on. See that little circle right there? You tie on your weight so you don't lose it, and go out and you will catch fish. Okay? The 2 straight tail worms I have, the ones that I've caught the most fish, hands down, from all the way back to the very beginning of me fishing, float tube fishing, pond fishing, tournament fishing, this guy right here. The Robo Worm 6-inch straight tail worm, specifically an MM3, Margarita Mutilator 3. It is a purple worm, brown bottom. It gets bit in basically every lake I've ever fished. That is a staple. Now, with that said, those of you guys are familiar with the channel and watch the channel, you guys know how much I love the Missile Baits Magic Worm. Again, a straight tail worm. It has more detail in it, more ridges. It's a little bit more thick than the Robo Worm. But guess what? These things are poured by Robo Worm. So same, great, not same, great colors. There are some different colors available in the Magic Worm. Like this guy right here, Blueback Secret. For the most part, guys, I'm throwing some kind of purple worm for my Texas rig, my power shot. I'm gonna call the bait caster a power shot. For the power shot weedless technique, I'm throwing some kind of purple worm, whether it's this guy right here is called Junebug Dream, or MM3 like I talked about, or some kind of Junebug. That is my go-to color for the most part on my 6-inch worms. Now, with that said, if I'm fishing a reservoir, maybe it's a lowland reservoir or a highland reservoir that has grass in it, it has spotted bass, it has largemouth, but I'm fishing for those largemouth, I'm fishing for those fish that are around bluegill beds or grass lines where there's lots of panfish and the water clarity is there, there's better visibility. That's when I will go away from the more contrasty purple worms, and I will go with the more natural, like a bluegill color, like an Aaron's Magic. This is actually called Blueback Secret, okay? It's an iridescent green worm with a blue vein and a brown belly. It looks so good in that clear water, so good around those fisheries that have clear water and bluegill. So again, I'll link this stuff down below in the video description. But again, being able to pick up a drop shot or a power shot, fish this around, you know, in your favorite ponds or your favorite lakes that have grass or heavy cover, wood stuff, right? Stuff that you can fish through around that drop shot, that power shot will get bit when other techniques won't. And then again, being able to throw it on a bait caster, braid to leader, and having that backbone, right, to get those fish out of that cover is awesome. And then just the ability to flip and pitch. When you're up shallow, you know, when you're out deep, it doesn't matter nearly as much. But when you're up shallow and you're just able to flip and pitch, let it fall, check it one more time, and then you're up, right? And then you're on to the next piece of cover, right? So it's just easier to fish on a bait caster. And then once you set the hook, you have all the control in the world if you use that CoverShot HD hook. It's not gonna bend out. Now with that said, if you are a guy that is in this situation, right, clearer water, but you're still fishing for largemouth, you're still fishing that power shot, you can actually get away with the owner CoverShot, okay? CoverShot HD. I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this. I'm kind of in the shade right now, but that HD is a super stout, heavy wire hook that you could just straight jack them and get them out of that stuff. But if you need more of a finessey, weedless presentation, that CoverShot works extremely well. Just lighter line, you know, you're in that finessier situation, lighter line, you're using that clearer bait, lighter line, lighter hook wire, so just be aware of that so you don't bend out that hook. But that is a straight shank, money winning hook right there. And then again, having that, there are a couple different types of drop shot weights. You have like that wedge style. See if I even have any in here. Yes, I do. It's more like that pineapple, that wedge style where you just run your line through it and wedge it up there. I just lose a lot more weights than this guy right here, where I could tie on, you know, just tie on a trialing knot or your favorite knot or whatever, and it's not going to come off. Speaking of drop shot, drop shotting has been, it's really the first, besides a Senko, a weightless Senko, drop shotting was really the first finessey technique that I really learned and got good with. I used to have all sorts of drop shot boxes in my boat or in my backpack or whatever I was doing to fish, but these little guys right here, this is from Spro. I'll link this down below, but you can see I wrote drop shot on there. I want to be careful. I don't want to dump everything out, but you can see I have all of my straight shank hooks. So I have my CoverShot HDs right here. I have my traditional CoverShots right there in sizes 1/0, 2/0, and 3/0. For the most part, a 6-inch worm, you can get away with a 2/0, works just fine. And then I have all my nose hook hooks right here. So I have my Mosquito Lights 1s and 2s. I have my G Finesses, my BKKs, all different style drop shot hooks right there. And then down here on the bottom, I have all of my weights, 8, 3/16, quarter, and even some 3/8 if I'm fishing heavy current or you know, need to fish deep really quickly. But that box works extremely well. You can throw it in your backpack. It doesn't take up hardly any room, and I have all the hooks, all the weights that I'll ever need for drop shot fishing right there. All right, now let's switch gears to more of the finessey drop shot, the more traditional, the stuff you've probably seen on TV. You know, we're talking big smallmouth caught on a drop shot, big largemouth spotted bass, but we're talking more finessey. We're talking spinning rod, typically either straight fluorocarbon, 6-pound, 8-pound, or braid 2-liter. I like to throw really light braid, like 10 or 12-pound braid, smooth braid, and then tied to like a 4, 5, 6, 8-pound leader, depending on, again, the class of or the size of fish I'm fishing for and or visibility. But you can see right there how much action this little bait has right here. That's actually the X Zone. That right here is the Finesse Slammer, and that thing is lights out. One thing I do want to talk about, I want to talk about nose hooking versus threading your bait on. You know, seems like every year we're talking about more and more pressured fish. We're talking about downsizing. We're talking about using lighter line and more finessey baits. Years ago, you would just nose hook your bait, right? And you'd be good. But look how much hook is out in front of that bait. The last couple years, I've just been threading my my baits on for this drop shot technique. It hides most of the hook shank. Okay, that hook sits really nicely in the back of that bait, and there's just not a big there's not a big hook out in front of your bait, and it kind of disperses the weight of the hook. That's another key thing with drop shot fishing. Don't use too heavy of a nose hook, otherwise your bait's gonna just go and lay vertical to your line, right? It's gonna just sink down. Get away, try to get away with as light of a nose hook as possible, because it will let that bait swim freer and more realistic than being weighed down with that heavy nose hook. So there's a few hooks I really like. The Mosquito Light is an awesome hook. That little G Finesse from Gamakatsu is great. So owner Gamakatsu, you're not gonna go wrong. BKK has another great hook, but I'll link those down below in the video description. But I go with like a size 2. Let's see what I got in here. Size 2, 1 basically are my go-to sizes for these smaller finessier baits. But again, these fish, they're still chasing bait a little bit, but again, the benefit of suspending this bait in their face when they are lethargic or when they aren't really feeding can get you bit when other baits won't. Now on the flip side, when they are feeding and they are chasing bait, being able to throw this thing out there, long cast, or whether it's straight below the boat, being able to open your bail and drop this thing straight down, get that bait down there quick and suspend it. I have caught so many fish doing that as well. The drop shot is just so versatile. But again, threading that bait on versus just nose hooking it just has worked really well for me. It seems like the more and more pressure these fish get and the more and more baits these fish see, the more realistic, the less hook out there in front of the bait I feel has got me more bites. That's just my opinion. But this is an awesome rod. You guys know, those of you guys that follow the channel, you guys know how much I love my NRX 822 DSR. This is a new rod. This is a GLX, so it's a model down in price point, but this thing is ultra light and very, very sensitive. Again, it's an 822 DSR drop shot rod. This thing feels like a feather in the hand. So if you are in the market for a high-end drop shot combo, that guy right there paired up with an X-Sense is so much fun to fish. There are a lot of great budget options as well. We'll leave some links down to those in the video description as well. So let's talk about my favorite shad or bait fish style baits real quick, and then we'll wrap this video up. But this guy right there, I talked about that one, that finesse slammer. This bait really stood out to us. We've talked about it throughout the years. A few years ago when the Bassmaster Classic was here in Knoxville, Matt and I walked into the entrance, and X Zone happened to have the booth right there at the main entrance, and they had an aquarium set up with all of their baits underwater rigged. And man, it was awesome to see their neutrally buoyant. So it just automatically lays flat. How important is that when a fish is sitting there staring at your bait, that it's not sitting like this, right? Or over the side or whatever. Having your bait sit natural, have the current or the waves from boat traffic or the shake of your rod tip, just giving that little bait subtle action. That thing has caught so many fish for me over the last couple years. That's my #1 go-to. Another great bait that we've talked about, discovered it in underwater footage. It just looks so much better than everything else at the time that we are throwing. This is the Missile Baits Bomb Shot. Now, one thing you'll see that these baits all have in common, they're downsized, smaller bait fish profile, but this guy has more of like a beaver style tail. So it has a real thin tail section, real subtle tail kicks, and that thing just moving around there naturally in the water gets bit But that missile bait, that bait's actually, this color is actually called Goby Bite. That is a really good color. Fish Alicious is another really good color. But that guy right there, can't go wrong with that guy either. Okay, just a different tail kick than that finesse slammer, okay? Now, for you ultra finesse guys, and we'll wrap this video up. You ultra finesse guys, the last couple years, seems like the market has went more of that finessier, smaller, bait finesse, BFS style stuff, right? And I don't blame them. We've caught so many fish doing it. These fish are smart, they're heavily pressured, more fishermen, and they're just seeing a lot of baits. So, 2 baits for you. This guy right here, this is the drop minnow from Great Lakes Finesse. I'll show you them in just a second. And this guy right here, another one from X-Zone. This is how their stealth finesse series, their bait finesse series. That's the stealth minnow, okay? If you're a guy that is drop shotting, whether it's big spots, smallmouth, largemouth, around bait fish that are downsized, these 2 are the best that I've found, okay? That dude just wiped out on camera. All right, that little guy right there, the stealth minnow. So compared to, well, let's just compare it right here. I got a 6-inch worm. It's so much smaller. And this little stealth minnow, again, neutrally buoyant, a ton of natural action with that really thin down tail. That thing is lights out on like a size 2 or even a 4 drop shot hook. That will get bit when some of the larger stuff won't. And that other one, like I said, from Great Lakes Finesse, again, a downsized drop shot bait fish sized drop shot bait, having that little bulbous tail down there, that real subtle shimmy or shake. Those are my 2 go-to ultra finesse drop shot baits. But guys, throwing a drop shot works extremely well throughout the year. Throwing a drop shot right now works extremely well when your other favorite finesse techniques or your other favorite reaction techniques just won't get you bit. So if you haven't already, tie on a drop shot, rig on one of these baits, head out to the lake and catch some fish, because I promise you guys, these things work. These worms work. The way we have them set up with those hooks we recommend work. They look so good underwater, and the fish agree too. Guys, if you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comment section. I will try to get those as soon as possible. I will link all of the rods and the reels and the line and the hooks and the baits, the colors down below in the video description to help save you guys time figuring out which worm to throw, which color to throw. If you're watching on different platforms, you know, if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the little 3 dots, click more, scroll down to the video description. Everything will be linked there with links right to Tackle Warehouse, where you can see HD pictures of all the baits we talked about, all the colors. If you're on your cell phone, you can click the little 3 dots, drop it down. But down below in the video description, below this video, just like every video, we'll have everything, a long description to everything we talked about, with links to everything we talked about, so you guys can see them with an HD picture. But guys, as always, we appreciate the support. If you learned something from this video, or you like this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.